Hey there, Douglas from Draftbit here. Today we're diving into the button component. In Draftbit, the button component is an interactive element with a background color, label, and optional icon. It's a go-to component for triggering actions, whether that's navigating to a new screen, submitting a form, or performing other custom actions. You can add the button to your screen from the component picker. So on the left side, we click add, then we can add the button. Once added, let's head over to the data tab to configure its essential properties. So we come to the right side, then we click the data tab, but make sure you've clicked the button. So here are the main options in the data tab. So the button text, so this is the label. This is what the button says. By default, it says get started. We can change this to whatever we want. Then down below, we have an icon. So this icon is going to appear on the left side by default. So we click this, then let's just add this plus icon. Up next, we have this disabled tag. So when enabled, this removes the button's functionality and grays out the label and icon, indicating that the button is inactive. So we just come here, then we can say true. That's going to disable the button, and then it's going to gray out. But we don't want that. Up next, we have loading. So let's say you're submitting a form. You click this, and then if this is set to true, a loading indicator is going to appear in place of this icon. Helpful if you're waiting for an action to complete. So let's do that now. So here we're going to set this to true, and the icon gets replaced, and then the loading indicator appears. So this can be replaced by a variable in a real application. When you submit a form or you make a call to your backend, as that call is taking place, you can change that variable to true, and then the loading indicator appears. Next up, let's explore interactions. So I guess this is the most important part about a button. So we have the on press and then the on long press. So the on press triggers an action when the button is pressed. To test that out, let's add a quick alert that says button clicked. So let's just go this, then it opens the action editor. Here we just search for alert. And what I want to happen when you click this button, I want an alert that just says button clicked. Then before we test that, let's just do this for the on long press. So the on long press is an action when the button is held for a long time, right? We're going to add another alert here. This time it's going to say button long pressed. Okay, perfect. Now in our device preview, let's go to the web preview. And first we're going to test the on press. So the on press, you just come here and you press the button. And as you can see, that alert pops up that says button has been clicked. Then for the on long press, you have to keep pressing it. So I've clicked and then button long pressed. Then up next, let's look at the configuration properties. So we come here to, this is the configuration properties. First up, we have component name. This allows you to rename the button component as it appears in the component tree. So here it appears in the component tree as button, right? And then here is main button. And in your component tree, that's going to change. Up next, we have delay long press. So as we looked in interactions, you can long press and then it's going to say button has been long pressed. So if you come here, this delay long press is just going to how long do you want to delay that process, right? So we can increase to say I want a long press to happen after 2 seconds. So it runs in milliseconds. So 2 seconds is going to be 2000 milliseconds. We update that. So now you have to long press for 2 seconds. So 1, 2, right? And then button long pressed. So that's what this controls. Okay, then lastly, we have the head slope. So this defines a larger clickable area around the button, which can be helpful on smaller screens. So it just increases the area that you can click around the button. Then finally, let's customize the style properties. So we come here, we go on styles, and then the first one is active opacity. So this adjusts the button's opacity when pressed. So notice that when I click this button, so I've gone ahead in interactions and I've deleted all the actions. So when we come back here and click this button, nothing is going to happen, but you're going to see it's going to flicker, right? So that's called active opacity. So we can adjust that here. We can increase it. So we can say when I click a button, I want the active opacity to be 0.2. So I can just come here 0.2, right? With 1 being the highest. So now when I click, you're going to see it's going to appear less visible. So I click and you're going to see. So it's going to become like grayed out. So that's the opacity that we've now selected for the active opacity. But then by default, maybe we can just do a 0.6. I think that's a good balance. And as you can see, it can give us, this is important for giving us feedback to say, the button is being clicked. Then we have disabled opacity. So it controls the opacity when the button is disabled. So it's visually clear that the button isn't active, So when a button is disabled, so if we go back to our data, remember this disabled property, let's set that to true, and then our button gets disabled, right? But then how do we know that this button is disabled? You see right now it's a bit gray. That gives us a hint. But then if you come on disabled opacity, we can actually increase that to say 0.3. And then that's going to be much more, less visible. Right? And then you can now see like, this button is now actually not active. Then up next, we have icon position. So let me just go back and re-enable our button. Go back to styles. Then we have icon position. Very self-explanatory. So by default, our icon is on the left. We can change that and say I want my icon on the right. The icon is going to go on the right. Next up, we have icon size. We can change this and then you can increase the icon size. But now let's just put back everything back to normal. Yeah, then further down, we have typography. So this is the font that you want the text inside to be, the size that you want the text inside to be, the background of the button. So I can pick another color. Then we have the border radius. So border radius is just the radius and it adds rounded corners to your button. So when you see a button with these rounded corners, that's called border radius. So right now by default is 8. I can actually increase this. I can say 28. Then you're going to see the button is going to become more rounded. As you can see, we now have a rounded button. And yeah, that's a quick overview of the button component. Now you know how to set up the button, adjust its behavior, and customize its appearance to fit your app design. Happy building in Draftbit. Thank you. See you in the next one.